I started my real estate career in the worst recession since the Great Depression, the 1974 recession. It was terrible. I didn't know it was terrible. I was just a kid, 22, 23 years old. I didn't know it was a recession. That's when I started my real estate career, and I went to work and I sold properties. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to sell properties. I didn't know it was bad. And then in 1975, the recession ended. All this pent up demand came in, and everybody wanted to buy a property. Everybody wanted to buy a property. My first year in real estate, I sold 49 homes and I had 13 listings sell for 62 transactions. I was number two in the company my first year. I thought, wow, what a business this is. You know, at 23 years old, you're just a knucklehead. I didn't know any better. I would get a commission check and I would go have a blast. I would just spend every last nickel and dime because I'd go out and buy another one. I'd just go sell another house, get another commission check, go have some more fun. It was just a great time in my life. I just did really, really well. Then I started getting a little older, and the company said, well, you should be investing. So I started buying rental properties, leveraging the little living daylights because we had inflation. Everybody wanted to buy a property and prices were going up like crazy. And we had inflation, very, very similar to what we just came through. 70s were very similar to the 2020s because everybody wanted a property. They were overbidding for them. There was bidding wars and prices were skyrocketing, just like in the 70s, go 70s. I was making a fortune. I didn't know any different. I didn't know that we were in a constantly changing economic environment. I was just a poor kid from the south side of Chicago. No one told me anything about the business cycles. I knew absolutely nothing. And as we started getting a little older, by the time 1978, I'm in love. I'm going to get married to my wife, whom I'm still married to. And in 1979 is our wedding. I'm not paying attention at all. And yet the newspapers, and yes, we had newspapers then. Everybody got a newspaper. And the nightly news was talking about inflation, just like now. And Paul Volcker was mandated to stamp out inflation. So at 29 years old, I lost everything. Newlywed, 6 months, making a lot of money. I went from selling 50, 60 homes a year to selling 6 or 8. Not enough. And of course, I leveraged these properties. And this guy came into office with the mandate to stamp out inflation, and that he did. And you've all seen this because this is what he did. He rose interest rates to historic levels, very similar to what's going on now. And you know that Jerry Powell is a student of Paul Volcker, and Paul Volcker stamped out inflation just like what is going on now and just destroyed my business. It was so bad that the people that I worked for lost all their office buildings, they lost their homes, they lost their cars, they lost absolutely everything. And I didn't know any better. And I started running out of cash. I had to sell these properties. I had to sell it to get the money out of them. And of course, I never gave them back. You know, I never had any foreclosures, but I lost the properties. I sold them, some at losses just to get some capital up. And I ended up losing just about everything. And my wife and I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And I must tell you, I told my wife this would never, ever happen again. Because this is what's happened. It was just mid-course corrections, not a full-blown completion. It was just mid-course corrections, vicious as all get out, but just mid-course corrections. You can see here, now we're using median sales price houses sold for the United States. So this is going back to 1982. You can see here's the peak. This is where we went into the first correction, Q3 of 79, and it ended 1 quarter later, 1979, just only one quarter is what this was. Then we started to recover a little bit. Paul Volcker, we did a double recession. And again, we went from Q4 1981 to Q1 1982, one quarter, and we dropped 5 or so percent, but it was enough to put us out of business. And we came here to Phoenix, Arizona, and not knowing what phase I was in, because I was just a young kid. I hadn't studied this yet. No one tells you this stuff. My wife and I were fortunate enough to come into the accumulation phase. And I told you, I came here, I told my wife I would never, ever allow this to happen again. And my wife and I went to work. I went to work selling real estate again. I was in the real estate business. And I never had any money, because whenever I had any money, I used it as a 20% down payment to purchase another property and made sure it was cash flowing. So my wife and I were always buying cash flowing properties. And of course, after you get 5 or 6 of these, they start to help you buy the next one. But we were always using all the cash we had to purchase properties right through this phase. Let me go back to this. So we caught the accumulation phase and then the explosive phase all through the late 80s. Now, here's what was going on under the surface. Right here in 1985, 86, the U.S. government changed the depreciation schedule for commercial properties, and they went from being viable to not viable overnight. And they started selling just like they're doing now. So commercial led the way through the 80s and through that collapse, just like now. They're no longer viable, just like now. The comparison is pretty compelling. So what was good is no longer good, and the investors got stuck and they started giving it back to the banks. Well, then, of course, the banks start bringing in their horns, and of course, the underwriting got worse and worse and worse, and spilled into housing, which then gave us the Resolution Trust Corporation and a savings and loan crisis. But all through this, my wife and I had accumulated properties that cash flowed. And even though business was getting poor, our rental business was doing very, very well. And in 1991, my wife and I left for Europe, and our cash flow was paying everything, paid all our bills. Pretty nice. Been that way the rest of our lives. So since 1991, my wife and I have been financially free. This is what's coming for you. The parallels between 70s and the 2000s, 20s is just very, very compelling. High inflation, high interest rates. We're starting to see commercial rollover. That's going to spill over into housing. It's going to have a housing correction, and it's going to give you a buying opportunity that's going to be absolutely unbelievable. You only get 3 of these in your lifetime. It's time for you to start paying attention and start doing this. Save your credit. Save some money. Get out of debt. Build reserves. Make sure your income streams or your job is intact, and make sure your credit is pristine, because in 9 to 12 months, we're going to start buying. And we're going to start buying things that are going to change your life. Go to my next slide and see what we have after this. So look at this. This is what's going on now. Again, Federal Reserve Electronic Data System, median sales price. It's dollars, not seasonally adjusted. It's not an index. It is actual figures. This is latest one was Q1 of 2024, and the last reported number was 420,800. You can clearly see here's the beginning of the accumulation phase. Here's the explosive phase, comes right up, and it peaks here at Q4 of 2022 at $442,600. Comes down about 11%, comes back up about 7%. And that's peak number 2, Q3 of 2023 at 435.4. We have not exceeded that. Now, we've had a very, very good Q2 of 2024. We have not reported yet. Is it possible that it exceeds that? Possibly. Nothing says it can't have 3 peaks, that it can only have 2. Nothing in the playbook says that that's the case. Could easily happen. I don't think it's going to exceed it. If it exceeds it, it's not going to exceed it by much. I do think that we are really at the end of the road for it. They do bounce around a little bit. It's a process. It is not a point. So could it? Sure. And all of these markets are regional in nature. When we start talking about Florida and Texas, just let me give you this thought. If you're in Florida and Texas and you are building thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of construction workers building these thousands and thousands of homes. When you stop building them, all those construction workers leave. They're unemployed and they leave the area. So not only are you no longer building, but you no longer have the support of all these people who are working. And you have this vacuum in your economies, and you're going to see a reset that's going to come to this. And Florida and Texas probably are going to experience that, because these workers that were working, I mean, if you're a framer, it is a young man's game. They're typically renting somewhere. You're not 65 or 70 years old out framing houses. You're generally in your 20s, early 30s. You're probably renting. You haven't invested into a house yet. And so you're transient. They will leave. So you have 100, 200, 300,000 workers leave. That puts a big vacuum on the local economies. And that, I think, is what's coming to Florida and Texas. And you just need to protect yourself for it. You're going to get through it. And we're going to buy right after it happens. We're going to start making some buys. Phoenix is still going to be probably the place because we have a decades-long trend. We'd like to talk to you about that and see if there's something we can do together and get some business going. This is where I'm at. I'm with West USA in Phoenix, Arizona. They are a $6 billion firm. They keep us in compliance. They do our paperwork for us. We have some incredible things, with the National Association of Realtors has this lawsuit. I'm not even quite sure what all that means. It means for me, though, that you as my clients, you're going to have to be employed with us. We're going to do a broker agreement. We're going to have to do a agency, because I'm not going to be allowed to speak with you unless we've got a contract. So we're easily to do that. We're very inexpensive on our consulting fees. I'm really, really good at what we do. So give us a call. We love your business. Let's plan for the future, because we are all going to make an absolute fortune together. My very, very best to you. Bye-bye now.